Oedipus Rex is the most celebrated of the Greek tragedies and has largely defined what drama means in Western civilization. The playwright's crafting of the plot, which is essentially a detective story, is superbly clever, with all pieces of the puzzle supported logically by details known earlier, yet leading to a final discovery that surprises the audience. The way that tension builds in a scene and the precise depiction of characters serve as a model for all future writers to follow. Aristotle was keen enough to recognize this achievement, and thus use Oedipus Rex as the model of an excellence play in his critical work, The Poetics. Furthermore, the play's influence on the theories of Sigmund Freud has given the masterpiece a special place in the understanding of human nature. Freud's groundbreaking work, The Interpretation of Dreams, began the modern approach to psychology, and at the core of that controversial book lies Freud's theory of the Oedipal complex that explains a common neurotic conflict. The revealing words that Freud quotes and then analyzes are pronounced by Jocasta at a crucial moment in this play. So singular is the position of this play in our culture that most educated people in the Western Hemisphere are familiar with Sophocles' version of this Greek myth. Every college student who studies psychology is likely to read about Oedipus and his problems. Moreover, literary critics, political scientists, film producers, as well as art critics and other intellectuals apply concepts illustrated in Oedipus Rex to many situations seen in modern society. The important truths about human nature illustrated in great literature are as relevant today as they were in ancient times. The best version of Oedipus Rex for students to read is the student edition edited by David Barry. The sentences in this edition flow smoothly, making reading a pleasure, and the acts and stage directions are clearly marked so that the play's structure is plain to see. Photos and a map bring Oedipus's world to light. An introduction and essays by renowned scholars explain the background and deeper meaning of the play. Both digital and print versions of Barry's edition are available at Amazon.com. The myth of Oedipus, like all myths, began in oral tradition as a tale that was told in villages and cities in different versions depending on the region. As all myths do, it reveals truths about human society and the success or failure of individuals locked in a power struggle. Yet Oedipus also asks, "Who am I?" thus embodying the ageless search for personal identity. The myth of Oedipus is an ancient one that includes a riddle to ponder, a prophecy to fear, a monster to face, and a fate worse than death. Many authors have written about the story, including Homer and the playwright Aeschylus and Pindar, who briefly summarizes the plot in his second Olympian ode. Therefore, the ancient Greeks knew the basic story very well before Sophocles presented his version of the tragedy on stage. Yet, Sophocles' treatment of the myth is the most popular version in part due to the electric tension between the characters on stage. In his play, the dialogue between the two characters is like a debate where one person makes a point and then a second person refutes that point. The contest is similar to a card game, where one player lays down a card and the second player lays down a trump card in response. In this way, the energy builds up as both players work together to solve a mystery if they are partners, or fight against each other if they are enemies. The dialogue sounds formal and stilted in a dignified, poetic way, which is unlike natural and sometimes illogical conversation that one hears in a modern play by Chekhov or Arthur Miller. As the play opens, the audience hears of the suffering and loss from the people of Thebes, as well as their cries for help from their king, Oedipus. The king sends for divine guidance from the oracle at Delphi, and is told that the plague can only be relieved by discovering who killed the last king, Laius, and delivering justice for the crime. The blind prophet Tiresias also arrives to speak with the king. Yet the two soon begin to argue bitterly, so Tiresias storms off, cursing Oedipus as he goes. Oedipus fears that Creon, who is the queen's brother, is plotting against him in order to seize the throne of Thebes for himself. Hearing of Oedipus's accusations, Creon confronts the king to assert his own innocence and honor. Oedipus only grows angrier, causing the citizens to feel more concern as their leaders quarrel. Jocasta, the queen, enters to try to reason with her husband, and restore peace among the royal family. Oedipus sends for a messenger, who is a witness to past events and who gives Oedipus some comfort. But then, Oedipus, always persistent in chasing down the truth, sends for a second witness, a shepherd, who knows of disturbing events that took place in Thebes. At certain moments in the drama, the audience may feel frustrated with Oedipus, who seems slow to realize a truth that is obvious to others. Of course, Oedipus is not stupid. Instead, he is repressing the truth, as does Jocasta at times, because it is too hurtful to his image of himself and his family. Psychologists explain that individuals who are uncomfortable with a past action or a present reality will expend much energy to repress the true situation in order to spare themselves the pain of having to face it. In fact, Sophocles' masterpiece provides a case study of repression. Irony is the rhetorical device that dominates this play. The playwright turns irony of all types into a theme that runs throughout the story and enhances the events and depiction of personalities so that the audience gets a fuller understanding of Oedipus's world. In the Fifth Symphony, Beethoven uses the simple phrase da-da-da-dum, which is G-G-G-F, to build a variety of patterns by varying the pitch and use of instruments, which delights the audience as the composer explores all of the many ways that the simple phrase can be handled. In a similar fashion, Sophocles presents verbal irony and situational irony to emphasize points about political power. Confusion of facts, the helplessness of humans and other challenges. Much of the lasting impression that this tragedy makes on the audience is due to Sophocles' adroit handling of irony. A simplistic definition of irony is when the opposite of what we expect happens. For example, if a friend tries to help a person, but instead the actions hurt the person, then the result is ironic. When a leader decrees that anyone who is caught committing a crime will be punished severely, and later he is caught committing that crime, his words are seen as verbal irony. Perceptive people recognize instances of irony in everyday life, and therefore the poet can employ our understanding of irony to make us feel more deeply Oedipus's suffering. And since suffering is at the core of every tragedy, Sophocles' profound understanding of suffering makes Oedipus Rex a truly great tragedy.